Hello and welcome to Long Beach Lens. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson, Executive Director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. And on this particular show, we have two incredible guests. Our first guest is the Executive Director of the Andy Street Community Association. Please welcome LaVerne Duncan. Hi, LaVerne.
Hi, Derek.
Now, you are the Executive Director of Andy Street, but for a while you had a life here with Long Beach Community Action Partnership, and though I worked with you in the community, I got to really know a lot more about you in that time that you were here. But for those who don't know LaVerne Duncan, share a little bit about your background and how you've helped change our community.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me.
Sure.
It's a pleasure being, especially since I've worked with you before.
Yeah.
But I actually came to Long Beach almost 20 years ago. I migrated here from New York. Why California, you said? Well, California is a lot slower paced than New York. And when I came, I originally worked within the private industry and then was working with the city of Long Beach for over 15 years. I actually retired from there. And I'd known you for some time,
Right.
and there was a special project that came up concerning African Americans in Long Beach that you asked me to come and work with you on.
Right.
And that's when we really got to know each other, I think, pretty well.
Now, let me ask you, because before you got here, you did a really transformational project on Andy Street. Can you share a bit about the Andy Street story? Because most people don't know about that.
Oh, I'd be glad to. It actually started almost 15 years ago. When I first came to work for the city of Long Beach, I worked for the Long Beach Housing Authority.
Right.
And I had only been on the job, I guess, about a month when my boss, Reggie Harrison at that time, said to me, oh, there is a special project I want you to work with. My actual position was as an ombudsperson for the Long Beach Housing Authority, which really allowed me to interact with landlords in the city as well as with the constituents for the Long Beach Housing Authority. And he took me to this neighborhood in Long Beach that was considered the hottest spot in Long Beach. Why was it hot? The Long Beach Police Department considered it hot because it was just a hot spot for gangs and drugs and prostitution. And you name it, they had it there. And the surrounding community was really up in arms because it was nestled really between single-family homes, and to the south of there was a gated community. It really was just a hot spot. And the city decided they wanted to do something about it. And I got involved in a task force, and what we were told to come up with was solutions for that particular neighborhood. It actually was just one street, Derek.
Right.
It was 24 buildings, 24 fourplexes, so there were 96 units there in this one little block. But it had the highest amount of murders, you name it, any kind of serious crime was happening on that street. The businesses were in uproar, and I was on the task force. Being there changed something with me. We went in one night, knocked on doors with the police, asking people, well, what can we do to help? And that was the very first time I'd ever seen people clap for the police to come into their neighborhood.
Wow.
And that made a huge impression on me. And the people were talking about, please, thank you for coming to help us. And that was my introduction to Andy Street.
Wow.
It was really like a microcosm of the people that live in this city, because it had everybody there. All races lived on that street, and all of them had a common problem.
And I guess this is a perfect example of how, on one hand, a little cancer can spread to cause an even bigger issue, and on the other hand, how a simple gesture of caring on your part and the police department actually transformed it from being a hot spot to actually a national model of how you can turn things around in a community, correct?
Yes, that is correct. We worked on with the 20 different landlords that we
Right.
had there, with the police department, different city departments. We all got together and instituted a common screening techniques. The city attorney's office came in when it was necessary to get rid of people that were drug offenders, et cetera. But the police department was very instrumental in working with us in the neighborhood, because you had mothers that were there that wanted to make sure that their children had a safe place to play.
Right.
And the police department was very instrumental and work with us to this day to turn it around from a neighborhood that had 60 to 70 police calls for service on serious crimes per month to today, where sometimes we have one, maybe two or three. And that's just simple things like maybe loitering, or somebody had a loud party.
Right.
And it was a magnificent turnaround because it's a public-private partnership.
Now, speaking of partnerships, if we switch gears here, in partnering with our team here, I know you and I worked on a very special event called the State of Black Long Beach.
Yes.
And it was a grand affair at the Expo on Atlantic Avenue years ago. And from that momentum, you started a program called Innovations Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. And this February 2016, you had a great weekend. Tell us about that event, and then we're going to share with those who are viewing a video from that day, but share how that came about and what you did to make it happen.
Well, it really came about through the State of Black Long Beach, working with you here. And there were leaders here in the city of Long Beach that were concerned about the impact that crime and health issues and economic issues, how it was impacting African Americans in Long Beach. And so we started out in actually one room in the Expo building in which we brought together our heritage. We also brought together statistics on what was happening in health and in jobs and in education here in the city of Long Beach. And it was so spectacularly successful because we had people waiting outside the room to come in and see the different artifacts. Because one of the things that we did was we showed African American history from the 1600s to the present, and what impact it has on society as a whole, not just Long Beach. And it was so successful that Blair Cohn of the Bixby Knowles Business Improvement Association asked us to do it again, but only this time. Can you do it in the entire building?
So LaVerne, in the time that we have left, I want to show that video, share it with everyone, and then we're going to come back and have some closing comments. So here's a video from Innovation, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow.
Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow became a Black History Month project back in 2012. And it began as a way for African Americans in Long Beach to learn about who we are, what the state of Black Long Beach is, and where we're going.
Forgotten Images is a collection of African American artifacts from the 1700s coming forward. We can break our exhibit down to 40 themes. We have branding irons, we have African burial pieces, we have toys, we have alligator bait, just an array of topics. We call it Forgotten Images because it explores and explains the trials and tribulations of African Americans in the United States.
The thing I enjoy most about this annual event is it brings together people from all ethnic communities to learn about African American history. I learned that there were many injustices and atrocities that our people faced, and the resilience that it took for the preceding generations to overcome that. And they had a strong faith, strong set of character, and a belief that the world would be better in time. And many people sacrificed and dealt with injustice so that generations after could live better.
One thing about Forgotten Images, we don't sugarcoat it. We're not politically correct. We're a group that's actually grassroots. We're under the radar. It's a private exhibit which we own ourselves. So when we go to the schools, from colleges to high schools to middle schools to elementary schools, We always tell the faculty and the principals at the school that we tell the truth.
One of the things that I've noticed this year is that community comes together. I mean, it's all races that have come together. The young, the old, and every race has come together to learn about what impact these images have.
This event is very stimulating. This event is very educational, and it's very informative. Anyone that desires to learn more about history and also to learn about the heritage of African American people and those that defended African American people during the Civil Rights era and before. The event will show you about specific things that happen that are not often documented in textbooks.
I will tell my friends that next year they really need to be here and to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful event. There was a concert yesterday with the Emotions. There's a gospel brunch here today. There's all of the great memorabilia here. I will tell them to make sure to mark their calendar to be here next year and not to miss this exciting event.
This is our third annual event, and yes, we will be holding this next year. A teaser is there's something for everyone next year. It will be about what's happening in our society today and what solutions that we can present to solve the issues that we're facing today.
That was special. That's your first time seeing it. What'd you
That's
think?
the very first time. I said, great job.
Yeah, well, Angel, he kind of put his magic touch on that, and we have a great team here. But what are your thoughts about the event? Now that it's behind you, what stands out in your mind about how everything transpired?
What stood out was we actually instituted a wall of excellence in which we are able to tell people about Long Beach people that have contributed much to our society. And what happened is they all brought, there were 7 different people, and they all brought more people into our exhibit. So it has spread throughout the city. And what I saw this year also was more of the different council districts coming in and seeing what impact it's had overall.
Well, your impact is amazing, and we're out of time, but I want to thank you for everything you do in our community, LaVerne. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will be speaking to Wende, Nichols, Julien, the Executive Director of the California Conference of Equality and Justice. Stay tuned for more of Long Beach Lens.
My name is Tauri Shakur. I'm a youth organizer with Youth Justice Coalition. Our 1% campaign focuses on taking 1% of the budget used for LAPD, LA City Attorneys, Sheriffs, County, and Probation. This equals to $100 million a year. That's enough to fund 25,000 youth jobs, 50 youth centers, and 500 peace builders in schools and on the street, therefore decreasing the school-to-prison pipeline and mass incarceration of people of color in general. Visit youthforjustice.org to learn more about the campaign and get involved.
It's very pet friendly. Everybody has a dog in Long Beach. It's Dog City.
Well, there's everything to do here. You got the Pike, you got Queen Mary, you got the beaches, you got paddle boarding, surfing. You go half a mile that way, you got surfing, you got downtown.
I just think it's the most incredible, most beautiful, most unique city, which has so much to offer. So I love it here and I'll never leave.
Hi, I'm Deborah. Are you tired of coming home to an empty, lonely house? Why not try Animal Match Rescue Team? We are a small dog rescue group in Long Beach. AMRT is looking for loving homes and has a variety of small dogs to choose from. Just come to Petco, 6500 PCH any weekend from 11 to 2 to see just a few of our little dogs. To find out how you could adopt, foster, volunteer, or donate, go to amrt.net. 100% of all proceeds go to our animals. Right, Pearl? You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Derek J. Simpson. Our second guest is a near and dear friend to me. She's the Executive Director of the California Conference for Equality and Justice. Please welcome Wende, Nichols, Julien.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it's my
it.
pleasure. I know that you've been in our studio for other occasions, but this is my first time to sit down and talk with you. And as I was preparing, I reflected back when we met. You weren't in your role, and I wasn't in here at this agency. A lot of years and accomplishments have passed since then, would you say?
Yes, but doing some of the same things.
Right.
I mean, working to help young people be the best they can, I think is a shared vision that you and I have.
Right, right. Now, how long, Wende, have you been with CCEJ?
So on this turnaround for 4 years, and then I was with the organization for 3 years prior to going to law school.
Right, right. And when I did research to help myself understand even better your mission, knowing that you're a very prestigious organization here in our community, I read about the isms. Can you share what that is and how you address it?
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that, and I feel really humble to work for an organization that has such a deep history, 53 years in Long Beach, and then almost 100 years now since it was founded nationally. And it was founded based on the premises of these isms, so on the idea that we have all the right words in the documents that set up the country around freedom, liberty, justice, equality for all, those kind of deep, profound beliefs, but that the everyday life of people living in the United States doesn't always match up to those ideal goals. And that there are systems of oppression that are built to hold some groups up and push some groups down. And so the isms are some words that everybody's familiar with, things like racism, of course, and sexism, but also a lot of more systems. For example, there's one that we describe as cisgenderism, which is a system that holds up people who live in the same gender that they have their outward appearance. So that when you're talking about people who are transgendered, who have different gender identities, that they often aren't felt, they don't feel and are often pushed down in those systems of oppression. So it's deep, and it includes religion and race and ethnicity and gender and all of those different factors.
Now, when you look at the profile of those who are participants in your programs at CCEJ, who would that typically be?
Well, it's changed a little bit over the last 4 years, not in terms of their demographics, but their geography. So for most of the history, the students who've participated have been young people from Long Beach, Compton, Signal Hill, the area right around here. Now we are serving people countywide throughout Los Angeles County. We have programs in Santa Monica, in East LA, in South LA, but the young people are, for the most part, high school students. We have some middle school students and then quite a few young adults, but mostly high school students. They are people who are looking for leadership and conflict resolution skills, and who are coming in to become the next advocates, hopefully replace us in our jobs, and help the mission of CCEJ to be accomplished.
Now, would you say that those two programs that you just mentioned are like your flagship offerings, or if not, what would be?
We really have two very basic programs. One of them is education, so we educate about bias, bigotry, and racism and how to overcome it. And then our other program is conflict resolution. So that's for adults and youth. And it's an opportunity for people to come together in a healing way and resolve conflicts that are as small as some minor argument to something as large as a crime for which somebody's been arrested.
Now, is that something where it could be a corporation that you would go into, or a nonprofit like us, or other
Absolutely.
programs?
We do a lot of training for teachers. Over the years, we've done a lot of training with police officers at large corporations, public agencies, and then obviously with young people.
Right. Now, how do you go out and identify from a youth perspective? I would imagine it's easier to identify the corporate and nonprofits, but for the youth that you have engaged, how do you identify them?
We identify them through volunteers who we have working on campuses. So teachers and counselors who are at high schools who act as recruiters, and they are the ones who compile the lists of students to come with us. So they know the students who are looking for leadership activities, who are maybe already engaged either in positive or negative leadership activities, and who would benefit from spending a few days at Building Bridges Camp and then be able to go deeper and become youth leaders and youth mentors.
You mentioned Building Bridges Camp. What's that all about?
So we're actually celebrating the 30th year of Building
Wow.
Bridges Camp and our partnership with Long Beach Unified. So it is a 3-day experience and it is transformational. I've had the opportunity to be up there on a few different weekends with different groups of young people, and it starts out on the inside, so who am I, what is my identity and what does that mean for me, and then goes to the outside. So how do my experiences with being discriminated against or labeled or bullied or being the bully impact my life, and how can I become an advocate to stop that on my school campus?
Now, that's in a 3-day program, but in your typical program, would a youth be engaged over the course of weeks or months, or how does that work?
So the 3-day program is the entry point. So they
Right.
go to Building
Oh, okay.
Bridges, and then when they come, and that's up in the mountains,
Right.
and when they come back down from the mountains, there are lots of things they can do. They can go back and get training in leadership and facilitation skills, so they can go back like as counselors,
Right.
youth leaders we call them, or they can participate in our monthly Building Bridges Youth Council, which meets at our office and talks about all kinds of issues, from police community relations to getting into college and discrimination in the workforce, and just have a chance to have that open dialogue. And then many of them grow up to become adult staff, and many of them now are on our staff. So
Oh,
it's
that's
it's
cool.
definitely an evolution process.
Yeah. So let's use our Long Beach CAP as an example. We have our Leadership Academy mentoring program, LAMP, here, and I know many years ago we would have you guys come in and work with our youth. But if I'm a church with a youth ministry or a nonprofit with youth, or maybe a mom that just has a child that I'd like to have engaged, how would we as an organization or as an individual go about getting involved?
So it's as simple as just making a phone call to our office to talk with someone about how that would work. And students from all over, especially Long Beach schools, are able to attend Building Bridges through their recruiter. We've got recruiters on all the campuses. But I think that one of the interesting things that we're able to provide when we make that initial contact is this education that just doesn't happen in the regular school system. So in the same way young people learn about algebra or about Black History Month or about different things that are in the curriculum, it's these skills around cross-cultural communication, conflict resolution, stereotypes, bias, discrimination that can't be unlearned. And once you learn them, you kind of have to get involved and be an advocate.
Yeah, I know that you and I both kind of came up working with youth directly, and now we're maybe a few steps removed. But when you listen to your staff, or when you do get engaged personally just to kind of hear what's going on, have the stories changed much over the years, or do you just see it different faces telling the stories?
I think that there are some things that have changed about the stories since I'm now 20 years deep into this work, and I see young people being more able to talk about issues around gender and gender identity, the LGBTQ experience, than they were 20 years ago. There's just more acceptance around the conversation in general. I also think that I feel really fortunate to be doing this work as a person who identifies as white, and in a time when I think that white people in Long Beach and around the region are starting to realize what has long been known by communities of color around the issues of oppression and racism. And so I feel like that's a difference in the conversation, is the ability to actually talk about those issues.
Right. And that's a powerful paradigm shift.
It is.
Yeah, especially for me growing up in Mobile, Alabama, and I was just recently there, and I can still see, where it's them and us
Right.
in many cases socially, if not necessarily in the workplace. Let's then move up to the bigger picture of what you're doing with CCEJ. And I know that you have several major events each year that help you to continue to achieve your mission. Can you give us some insight as to what those events are?
Sure. So we have the two major programs that I was telling you about around education and conflict resolution. And the conflict resolution piece, our big program is restorative justice, where we're providing programs for teachers all throughout the year to come in and be trained on how to implement restorative justice in their classrooms, and then also in the criminal justice environment. And so we've been doing a lot of big events to draw attention and learning to that topic. So we have a Professor Margaret Burnham, who is a professor from Northeastern University School of Law, but also has a long history of restorative justice in the community in the Deep South. So we do we have opportunities for people to come in and network and have a good time and share a meal together, and then also get a learning experience out of it. And sometimes that's a broad invitation, like the interfaith, intercultural breakfast.
Right.
Sometimes it's a very specific invitation, like teachers from a certain school district. And so those are the programmatic events that we do. And then we have fundraising events where we're able to honor people for their humanitarian efforts. We do three events like that a year. In the fall, we have the Gene Lensner Awards, which recognizes really grassroots level leaders.
Right. Great gentleman in our community.
That's right,
Great leader.
yes.
Yeah.
He is, he's like our godfather there at CCEJ. And then in September, we honor humanitarians from the food and beverage industry, which is a 40-year-long supportive relationship and partnership that we have. And then in May, we have our big humanitarian awards dinner, which we get to honor you this year for your contributions to the community.
Yeah.
So it's every year, the honorees at that May Gala are people who have dedicated just decades of work towards making, lifting us up to reaching those goals that we hope to achieve.
Well, when I was very humbled and honored when I got the call about the humanitarian award in 2016, and thank you and your board for seeing me in such a light. When I look at the people who've gone before me, there's some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
So it's something special, and that event is special. I've attended it many times over the years, and you guys do great work. We have about a minute left, but what would your ideal vision be in the next 12 months for how we as a community could work together to achieve some of the things that you are doing at CCEJ? Is there any one thing that stands out in your mind?
There is. I am really trying to be laser focused on thinking about changing the way we interact with young people who have committed crimes. And that if we could move towards a society where we focus on healing and accountability, that we would find a lot of the other issues would be reduced. And so that's the main focus, and that's what we're doing through our restorative justice programs.
I couldn't think of something any more important, because that has generational potential in terms of impact. And thank you and your team for all that you do. And thank you for taking the time out today to come and join us. You've heard Wende talk about what they do at CCEJ. That concludes our show. I'd like to thank LaVerne Duncan, who was with us earlier, and Wende, Nichols, Julien for joining us today. Be sure to follow PatNet TV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest updates. This show has been brought to you with support from the Long Beach Community Action Partnership. Thank you for watching Long Beach Lens.